Nadeema. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lorraine Botha, and I'm the chairperson for this Standing Committee of Education. I'm firstly going to give an opportunity for the members of the Standing Committee to introduce yourselves. Thereafter, I would give the opportunity to the WCED, and then I will give the opportunity to the officials of the Public Service Commissioner's Office to introduce yourselves in that order. Thank you very much, members.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good afternoon, members. My name is Kilian Postman.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good afternoon. My name is Khalid Sayed. I'm a member of the committee.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Member Brancais.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Ferlin Christians, a member of this committee.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and colleagues. Regan Allen.
Thank you. WCED.
Chair, sorry, I joined late. It's member Makamba Boya.
Good afternoon. Welcome, member.
Good afternoon to everyone, and good afternoon to you, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you. WCED.
Good afternoon,
Okay,
honourable
nobody's-
members. My name is Ridwan Lani from the Chief Directorate Districts.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and colleagues. I'm Leslyn McGlenn from Physical Resources.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, colleagues. Brenda Robertson, Acting Director, Metro Central.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Junaid Dari, Circuit Manager, Roads High.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Lisa Mulder, Deputy Director, Corporate Services, Metro Central.
Good afternoon, everyone. Berenice Daniels, Director for Inclusive and Specialized Education Support.
Thank you very much. If that is the department, I just want to check with you. I have Ms. Landy Diamond that would also have been in the meeting. Have I missed her introduction?
I am just trying to call Ms. Diamond in the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lani. Then I will go over to the PSC.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members and officials. The name is Leonardo Goosen, Public Service Commissioner.
Good afternoon, members and Chairperson. Paul Rockman, Public Service Commission. Some of my colleagues have also joined. If they could also just introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. This is Bryony Joynerwood, and I'm a researcher with the Public Service Commission.
Good afternoon. I'm Karen van Heerden, and I'm also a researcher at the Public Service Commission.
Mr. Rockman, I still have a Ms. Nadeema Dalvi, Mr. Sipiwe Kakela, and Ms. Marlene Sleer. Are they not joining? I'm just checking with you.
Yeah, they should be connected, Chairperson. I think they're in one venue.
Okay, I want to bestow the opportunity for them to introduce themselves. If you are on the platform, please introduce. It does not seem so, so I am moving on.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. I want to say I want to welcome the media, and I want to welcome everybody else who is joining in on the Standing Committee meeting today. And I want to render an apology from the Minister of Education in the province. The Minister is in another meeting that has been scheduled quite some time ago. So I'm rendering an apology for her. Then,
Chairperson, I see Ms. Landeka is joined there.
Ms. Landeka, can you introduce yourself for the record?
Good afternoon, colleagues. I am Ms. Landeka Diamond, Director for Metro East Education District. Thank you.
Thank you very much and be welcome. So colleagues, in regard to today's meeting, I just want to just indicate to you the following in regard to the virtual platform, that please keep all your microphones muted, as well as your videos, please keep that muted. And then if you want to raise a point of order, or you want to request an opportunity to speak, please use the chat function or use the raise your hand function for that purpose. And then if you have the opportunity to speak, you may then also use your video. Otherwise, if the bandwidth is unstable on your side, please then leave your video muted. I am leaving my video muted because the weather is not so good here. So I'm rather playing on the side of caution. Then when you have had the opportunity to speak and you are done, please then mute yourselves once more. Then in regard to today's meeting, members, I have made an amendment to this meeting today. The WCED has been requested to attend this meeting so that they could respond to the reports that will be presented by the PSC. With that said, I then want to give over to the PSC to start with the presentations. Mr. Goosen, it is over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson, and honourable members. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and present. It's the first time that I'm presenting to the Standing Committee on Education since my appointment in 2018, and the education sphere in the Western Cape is one of the areas that we do quite the bulk of our work. And so thank you very much for that opportunity. I'm very happy that the Western Cape Education Department is here, because while we play an oversight role, we collaborate quite well generally with the department, and all of our reports go there, and we have feedback sessions as with these reports, particularly the first one that we're going to be dealing with being the report on the assessment of the Western Cape Education Department's response to emergency repairs at schools.
Mr. Goosen, if
yes.
I can interrupt you, sir.
Yes.
I have omitted to just indicate that we are going to be briefed by your office, the Public Service Commissioner, on the assessment of the Western Cape Education Department's response to emergency repairs at schools, the investigation into allegations of maladministration and misappropriation of funds at Rhodes High School, and the investigative report, the complex case and the case number, in regard to the Sherry Botha School. I'm just checking with you that we are still doing, or you still doing the briefings in that order, sir? You are muted. If you can unmute yourself, you are muted.
Okay, Chairperson, just because the presentation is structured in that way, I request that I present first the infrastructure report, the emergency repairs report, and then secondly the Sherry Botha School, if that's in order with you, Chair. Just because it's in that order in the presentation. Is that in order?
That is in order. I just want to then just alert the department and the members on the platform that we're going to do the Sherry Botha School. That is the second presentation. So we are amending. Presentation 3 becomes 2 now, and 2 becomes 3. Thank you, sir. You may continue. Thank you very much.
Just another procedural issue. I'm suggesting, and it's up to the chair for you to rule on this, that once I present the report on the emergency repairs, that maybe at that stage might be a good opportunity for members then to ask questions or interrogate, or for the department to respond, just because it is a sort of standalone report as opposed to the other two, in a sense, ad hoc complaint reports that we have. So that is something that we can consider, Chairperson.
I'm favorably be considering it. So we are doing the assessment, the first report, and then I'll do a round of questions and answers by both yourselves and the department, and then we will do the other two, and then we will do a Q&A on that. Okay, so I've taken your guidance there. We will go like that. I just see the hand of Ms. McGlenn. Ms. McGlenn?
Oh, thanks, Chair. I appreciate that because I have to be in interviews later, and I would appreciate, dealing with my portion of it. So I appreciate that we can do the emergency maintenance first, and I will then be available to respond or to answer any questions, and then if I may be excused while you do the other items in which I'm not involved. Thanks.
Sure, Ms. McGlenn. Mr. Goosen? Without further ado, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson. So the assessment that the Public Service Commission conducted in relation to the emergency repairs at schools, of course, is in line with our mandate, our oversight mandate, and our mandate to make recommendations and to do research and so on. It was really a response to a number of incidents which had been reported in the news, not only in the Western Cape but nationally, relating to failing infrastructure. And shortly after taking office in 2018 in October, there was one school in Mitchell's Plain, which was reported on in the media. And then again, there was issues. Then shortly thereafter, there was a school in Gauteng, and then there was another school somewhere in the Western Cape, in Ravensmead, where there was also reports in the media relating to failing infrastructure. So of course, our approach was to then firstly go and do an on-site inspection, speak to the principals involved, speak to the department, Ms. McGlenn, among others, and just to get some sort of insight. And so from those initial meetings, we held the view, or I held the view, that maybe it's necessary to do a broader project, in a sense, to assess the question of infrastructure and failing infrastructure in the Western Cape, so that one doesn't deal with things on an ad hoc basis. And of course, our intention is never to, in a sense, always just to criticize issues that is problematic, but also to make suggestions to the departments in the Western Cape in the interest of better service delivery. And so our objectives in the assessment was to assess the experience and effectiveness of the system of dealing with emergency repairs, and then to, in a sense, gain insight into the end user experience and the effectiveness of the WCD response. And when we talk about the end user, we're in a sense talking about the school and as headed by the principal. And then finally to make recommendations to improve the current system. So the full report is available, but some of the findings that we made was firstly that not all principals were familiar with the WCD standing operating procedures for emergency maintenance in schools. And the information was gained from respondents that show that 20 out of 58 principals that were approached were not familiar with the standard operating procedure. Almost half of the sampled principals indicated that some of the emergency repairs requested were as a result of maintenance that had not been done in the first place. In other words, and this had been my concern initially when I visited the schools, that a challenge in maintaining a building as it should be maintained then results in emergency repair. So you don't maintain a building and then the roof blows off. So now it becomes an emergency because now life is, for example, threatened or something like that. Then 81.8% of respondents indicated that they were not contacted within 2 days of logging a request, an emergency request. And the stated standard response time for the site inspection, according to the SOP, sorry, I'm just going to have a difficulty seeing here with this, the view. Sorry. My apologies. It's fine, take it out. Okay. So sorry, it's just the view in the platform. So the stated standard response time for site inspection according to SOP for the two highest level of emergency repairs was 12 and 72 hours. So those are emergency repairs, which is very, very urgent. And this was a concern for us and attests to a system that doesn't comply in a sense with its own standards. And there's just some of the findings which we put in tabular form in terms of the amount of days that various principals said it took for the WCD to make first contact with the school. Now, the majority of approved requests, and that's just over 50%, resulted in the contractors starting the repair work within 2 months of the approval. This excludes making safe. Now, the system works in the way that when there's something that is immediate danger, then contractors are dispatched to the site, and this is made safe. So, for example, in the one school, the balcony, the banisters on the balcony was breaking down. So the contractor came and simply stabilized the banister that was there, notwithstanding the fact that there were still other issues that needed to be dealt with relating to the balcony itself, but just they could close off an area, for example, of the balcony so that learners and educators wouldn't walk there, just to make it safe until the work could be done. And then a third of approved requests are only implemented by the 4th month or thereafter. This is now according to our survey. There's a tabular thing of the timelines. Then in terms of satisfaction with the quality of repairs, the majority of principals stated that they were at least fairly satisfied, but concerning was that 31% of principals were completely dissatisfied with the repairs that were done. Communication was highlighted as a major impediment to ensuring that the school and school communities are properly informed of the status of their requests for repairs, the approval of repair work, and the delivery of the repair work. And the relationship among all role players in the delivery of repair work, so that's the school, the contractors, Department of Public Works, in a sense, from the survey, relegates the principal to an observer with no direct influence over the quality of the work being done by contractors. And importantly is that the contractual arrangement is between Public Works and the contractor. Some principals interviewed, the principals indicated that the capacity and the appetite to undertake emergency repairs themselves with the support of their school governing body. So then there's a range of recommendations. After this, we had meetings with the department as well. One was that the definition of emergency repairs needs to be detailed, and there needs to be specific criteria communicated to principals. Risk professionals must produce a workable non-professionals assessment tool or layperson's tool for principals to objectively assess the emergency repair situation at their schools. Stipulated timeframes within the SOP needs to be adhered to, but must also be monitored for performance. And then there needs to be specific and intentional role assigned to the principal during the delivery of infrastructure. The role should include the ability to oversee the repair work, to interact with the contractor, to raise issues of concern with the project manager, and to be able to finally express levels of satisfaction with the repair work that has material aspect on whether the contractor is paid or not paid. And then for the sake of accountability, that principals are to be informed of the repair specification, the details of the work, the materials, and so on, before the work commences, as well as the full value of the repair contract. The WCD must have a system that guarantees first contact with the principals once an emergency repair has been logged, irrespective of the nature, extent, and severity of the repair required. So that, one is assured that once a call is logged, there's going to be first contact within a certain period of time. Doesn't matter that the principal might be advised or by the system that this is now classed as emergency repair, it will take so long, but there must be initial contact that the principal is satisfied that it is being dealt with and attended to by somebody at the WCD. Then, as I mentioned, we had then further feedback sessions with the department, and the department was generally amenable to most of the recommendations, and in some instances indicate, look, this is part of the policy in any event. So firstly, the definition, there was an agreement that the definition should be looked at, and that the improvement actions would include providing clearer definition and what constitute emergency requests, including the description of risk or impact in sort of standard terms. Then the role of the principal. The response was that the role of the principal involves facility maintenance. It's recognized in South Africa and in the Schools Act, and also in terms of the proclamation of the Schedule for National Policy for Equitable Provision. It is necessary and expected that school facility maintenance is accorded priority as part of school programs aimed at promoting teaching and learning goals and effectiveness. So, the department is saying the principal already has an active role to play. And the principal is responsible for undertaking immediate response measures. School facilities management, according to the department, is a specialist function that requires specialized knowledge and skills. And the significance of facilities management to school functionality is recognized. And the dedicated organized to the extent that this department has dedicated structures responsible for guiding school facilities maintenance. It includes what's called the works inspectors that must oversee the needs of the schools, maintain the line of sight on asset conditions, and oversee repair specifications and conduct delivery assurance. Now, the department says that the principal's role is that he needs to be focused on determining and signing off on the physical conditions that need to be met at a minimum, and that school functionality is restored, and of course health and safety of the users is assured. Now, in still dealing with accountability of principals, the department responds that they would support the recommendation by the Public Service Commission, and they would strengthen the role of the Works Inspector unit with more effective communication tools and training, that it may discharge its responsibility to better keep the principal and all other stakeholders, which is the SGB, the parents, the learners, informed of progress, but not as a prerequisite for works to commence. So recognizing the role, but that will not delay works. Then works inspectors will retain responsibility and will also be strengthened to deliver on responsibility to communicate the findings of site inspections and assessments, direct the project manager and contractors on the scope and sign-off of the works. Of course, in terms of financial information, the department says the full value of repair contracts won't be made available, because that would have been one of the issues raised, because it requires contextualization and procurement arrangements relating to procurement arrangements. Then in respect of the alternative delivery model, in other words, remember some principals said that they were able, with the school governing bodies, to undertake some repairs. The department responds that they support this in principle, and they are already in place in respect of minor corrective works below a threshold. Schools are expected to hire contracts and effect repairs, and therefore hold some competence as regards procurement. In respect of a solution that includes SGBs within the delivery model for larger infrastructure repairs, this needs to be evaluated, and there's a whole range of things that needs to be looked at, because of course it's subject of cabinet decisions and provincial treasury instructions and so on. So that is something which the department views positively, but is something that cannot immediately be implemented. Then the volume of emergency repair requests will require a reflection on the extent to which the central monitoring oversight capacity might need to be expanded to support the proposal of governing bodies playing a greater, schools itself playing a greater role. And then, of course, there's considerations which the department says that needs to be taken into account, such as the classification of the emergency requests, so the urgency of the repairs, the assessment of the local school operating circumstances in terms of management and governance, because not all schools are equal in terms of that. Furthermore, they were talking, the department now also says they would look at implementing incentive and reward mechanisms in which schools are rewarded with being entrusted with infrastructure delivery on the basis of successfully completed works projects and proving competencies with corrective maintenance will be explored. So of course it means looking where are the strengths. Does the school have the strength and capacity? And therefore, it says rewarding, but it's really in terms of giving a greater level of autonomy, as far as I see, to schools in terms of this area. That it? Right. And then the system, the Western Cape Education Department must have a system that guarantees first contact once an emergency repair has been logged, and then again supported on the basis that it is being continually improved and evidence being retained. And then the time frames, which is an issue that needs to be adhered to. Again, the department supports that, and that the assessment must be shared with principals once completed. And then monitoring. The department says that under strict condition, the chief program manager, in conjunction with the chief with the director infrastructure, leads the discussion with the school, the district and community stakeholders, and the sharing of the assessment reports will be accessible via registration. I'm just trying to see what the recommendation was here. It's the monitoring of performance. Yes. And then the recommendation that the principals are able to monitor the processing of the request via the CMA system. Again, the WCD supported this response. I might just say, and members will be aware that obviously with a range of issues that were raised by the department in respect of methodology, in respect of the research. But generally, I mean, we were in agreement about a range of these issues. Of course, the whole question of school infrastructure remains in focus, especially given the challenge that we're having in respect of excess learners, which we've had this year, and which we probably will have again. The infrastructure feeds directly into that because it's in a sense the same budget that in respect of repairs and maintenance, but then budgets for building further schools as well. So it's the same. It's the same, really around the same narrative that we are speaking. Chairperson, that is the presentation from the PSC side.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Goosen, for that presentation. Before I give over to members to
Chairperson, I sort of seem to have lost you. Are we in the meeting?
No, I think it's the chairperson that is experiencing problems. I also lost her for a...
Just give us a second.
Whilst we wait for Member Botha to come back, I think she's lost connection. Shall I take over in the meantime?
Member Bosman?
Yes, you may, Member Bosman.
I support that. Thank you, Member Bosman.
I also support it.
Thank you,
Yes,
colleagues.
Member Bosman, you can proceed. I support that. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Can we now then go over to the WCED for their input?
Okay, thanks, Member Bosman. I think that the presentation is an accurate portrait of events, of the survey that was conducted and the findings. And I think we work closely together, as Mr. Goosen said, to try to improve and resolve some of the findings. I mean, I had summarized from the report, I had summarized 8, and I think he portrayed it exactly like that, and our response. But there's just some of the points that I'd like to respond to, and I'd like to make some recommendations in taking this forward. So, I mean, there was a percentage mentioned that said they were not contacted. Now, we haven't at this point managed to improve the system so that the principal is contacted by telephone or email and on the online system on the CMIS emergency, the system that we've got to report the emergencies. So I think some principals don't check the status, and therefore it was quite a low percentage. But we do try to follow up with principals now. Since the report, we do follow up using various communication channels. So we email, we phone, and we update the status. It's not always possible. Time doesn't always allow us to do, all three of those, but we do we've done a lot to try to improve the communication. We had a SOP before the report, and after the findings, we then used the SOP we clarified certain areas of the SOP, the roles of the principals, for instance, we changed and tried to clarify that. And various other areas of the SOP we did try to improve. A lot of the principals, it was mentioned that a lot of the principals, well, not a lot, but they were, I think it was 30%, said they were not satisfied with the work. What often happens with emergency maintenance, we fix the emergency. Now, a lot of the schools are not in a good condition, as has been described, and have got other issues that do not qualify as emergency maintenance. Obviously, the budget is limited. I mean, we really are under strain from a budget perspective. So we deal with the emergency, and we try to do sort of work that was affected by the emergency, but we cannot do everything that the principal requests. And I think this is a lot of the dissatisfaction, that they expect everything at the school will now be repaired under that emergency item. So that is sometimes part of the dissatisfaction. The communication we've also worked on quite extensively to try and improve the communication. We have improved the online system, and we have tried to strengthen and have a bit more levels of communication on the status, and so we've done some work on that. I just want to stress that the contractual agreement is between Public Works and the contractor, and so therefore, before payment can happen, we do consult the principal, but in terms of the contract, Public Work does have to sign off the work for payment. So that is also, a lot of principals are not happy with that, but the agreement are between those two parties. So we can't bring the principal in as a third party to withhold payment. So we are trying to work on an amicable partnership between the three parties, but the contractual agreement is between Public Works and the contractor. In terms of schools dealing with emergencies and being given funding, it's a Treasury instruction that Public Works implement. I think in 2013 it was changed. The WCD, in fact, procured contractors themselves and for emergencies, and so it's a PT decision that Public Works is the implementing agent for emergency maintenance. So we are having engagements with Provincial Treasury in order to empower schools, as explained by Mr. Goosen, who are capable and who do have the necessary skills to be able to, and we're also looking at the facilities management system that schools can tap into, but just a different model completely of dealing with emergency maintenance. In terms of the response times in the SOP, between 12 and 72 hours, we cannot put 2 hours and then be bound. So we had long deliberations about the response times. And I just want to stress that, there are people who respond in the middle of the night, but you can't put in a SOP that will respond in 2 hours. I mean, then we are setting ourselves up for failure. So we do wherever possible, try to improve on the response times and at least get somebody out, even if it's a WCED official, Public Works, if they can't get there. Between us, we try to get somebody to the scene as soon as possible to make safe and prevent further damage or prevent injury to anybody on the premises. So, you know, it's going to put liability on our HOD if there is a fatal accident. So it's a very difficult one to, you know, to bring down to a time that is acceptable to all. But we'll keep working and looking at that response time. Then I think what I want to recommend is that it's been a while since we've implemented. I mean, I've got the summary in front of me, which maybe I can share. A lot of it was included in the presentation, but I think so that we can just have an update of where we are and what we are still working on and what we have done, so that there can be some kind of feedback between the PSC and the WCD, and that we can discuss the way forward on the critical items that remain that we haven't dealt with. But I think we've done a lot of work and we've worked together quite a lot to try to respond to the report proactively and improve the service of the emergency maintenance. Thanks. That's it from my side. If there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. McLean, and thank you, Member Bosman, for holding the fort. And I must apologize to this meeting. I had a power outage here, so the Wi-Fi also said goodbye in that instance, so I had to get the modem to log back in. So my apologies for that interruption. Members, I'm now going to go to a round of questions to both the Public Service Commissioner on the report, any clarity thereon or questions, and then to the WCED. Keeping in mind that Ms. McLean is going to leave us right here after. I'm noting Member Sayed.
Thank you very much, Chair, and my greetings and thanks to the Public Service Commissioner and to the department for their response. I'm going to, when I ask, I'll say specifically for whom it is or whether I want both to respond. My first question is with regards, because I know the department raised the issue of principals having these demands. So my first question is directed to the department. I want to get a sense on them, why are principals, and perhaps the PSC can also shed light because they, I'm sure, interviewed principals. Why are principals not aware of the WCED standard operating procedures? Yeah, I just wanted to get a sense of that. And what is the impact of this on infrastructure maintenance? And then if the PSC can tell us how can we hold WCED accountable in this regard, or actually assist them. So that's the one. Then also on that slide, based on the PSC assessment, could the PSC probably shed light on what is the prevalence of schools not maintained in the province, which results in the need for emergency repairs? And secondly, did the PSC visit schools in which principals raised the concern of schools that are not maintained in the first place? If so, what is the condition of such schools? Then, with regards to the concern of the system that does not comply with its own standards, I want to ask the PSC, did they engage WCED about this? And if so, what are the reasons that were given by the department for this, and how are they going to improve on this going forward? Chair, that's it for now.
Thank you very much, Member Bosman.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I would just like to know, just for interest sake, if the PSC can tell us whether there's been any other research done comparing how the Western Cape is doing with the rest of the country as well when it comes to repairs, and then also if whether the principals has indicated in their response that they have a direct line with the WCED to be able to communicate these, and whether they've got any issues with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Member Brinkhuis.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, yes, I want to welcome the presentation by the department and PSC. That if I could get an update from the department on a specific case at the Mitchell's Plain High School on the fencing, what do you call it, on the upgrade of the fencing. If I could just get an update. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mine is latching onto what Member Sayed was asking, and I would just want to know what are some or the kind of reasons that the principals indicated why they are not familiar with the standard operating procedure. And then that is the round of questions.
Excuse me, Chair, my hand is up. Can't you see
I
it?
cannot see a hand of there. I see it now. My apologies, Member Christians.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, my hand was up. Okay, thank you very much. Just maybe, and Chair, you touched on it. They said 20, only 20 principals was aware out of 58 about the emergency repairs at schools. Only 20 out of 58 principals was aware, and you know that is maybe concerning, but of the standard operating procedures when it comes to emergency repairs. The question is, I mean, was that not brought to the department before this investigation, that principals, you know, how did the department not know that principals is not aware of this SOP? Another question is, do we have something like emergency repairs and something like dangerous, you know, when lives in danger or that? So emergency repairs, is there a different definition if the repair is almost, you know, needed to take place immediately because of danger? And then if the department can just tell me, you know, does principals report emergency repairs, or does the emergency becomes an emergency because they're not performing their task or not taking due diligence when it comes to maintenance reported, you know, in advance? So if we can just understand that, because I really want to break up emergency repairs by the negligence of principals not reporting, and where there's danger, where there's a real emergency. Do the department differentiate when it comes to those repairs? And maybe just the last thing, the department did answer on this about the response time. You know, a person do understand if it's in the middle of the night and so on, the response time. So do principals know, you know, they know, of course, the time limit of response time, but do they know, you know, if it's not emergency in the middle of the night? I think they only report emergency in the middle of the night. Is there then, like the person say of the WCED, somebody of Public Works goes out, something department goes out? Is that only in exceptional cases? You know, so I just want to see, where does the delay takes place? Why is there in the response a delay in the response? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Member Christians. Member Allen.
Thank you so much for noting me, Chairperson. I just wanted, I'm partly covered by your input and comments made by Member Christians now, but I'm not sure if I've missed feedback from the WCED regarding the indication from principals stating that they have the capacity and appetite to undertake emergency repairs themselves. How was that communicated to the, or what's the feedback from the WCED in that regard?
Thank you, Member Allen. That is the first round of questions. Mr. Goosen first and then Ms. McGlenn.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Chair, I do have two members of the team with me who were led by Mr. Rockman in respect of the, the survey as well. So they will also just supplement. So firstly, the question of the reasons why principals are not aware. Chair, we're not sure why they're not aware of the SOP. It's simply put, they are not aware. Those that they didn't know, they didn't know about the standard operating procedure on emergency repairs. So I think, yeah, correctly, I think the department will probably be able to give ideas around that. And how does what does one do to make sure that people are aware of it? I suppose, there are new people coming into the system, and so we're making assumptions here, but there are new people coming into the system all the time. And so it would require that, when one does induction, for example, with principals, part of the induction training. Not only that is part of the induction training, that governing bodies, school governing bodies, for example, are orientated in respect of their role, in respect of the maintenance of the school, and so on. And then really an ongoing communication, I suppose, from the department side. But really it needs to form part of induction of new principals, and then ongoing education or training around that. And particularly now, especially, Chair, where it seems there's shifts in the department's thinking in terms of policy and how they can better tidy up the system. In terms of the role of principals, it's going to be very critical that the changes or the adaptations be effectively communicated to principals. And perhaps, one needs to extend this beyond the principal to the management teams as well, because then you've got a broader pool of persons as well. When the principal leaves, there's going to be somebody else, and there are a broader pool of people that can assist in taking responsibility. Chair, we need to bear in mind that this was a study, and any study has its limitations. And so we're not able to say, what the prevalence of schools are in the Western Cape province that are not maintained. And then the question of the standards that the department not complying with its own standards, that would be in respect of the response times, the initial response times. And so it is something that I think the department, in the response we do have it there, has acknowledged that where their time frame set, I think it's 12 hours, they have not always been they've not always been able to respond within that response time. And so, for example, Ms. McGlenn mentions that, they're not going to move the time to a shorter period. And correctly, because clearly the period that's already been set, 12 hours, is not always being complied with. So that is when we say they haven't been complying with their own response times. And so, yes, again, as Ms. McGlenn says, you need to assess what is required within that, what is necessary, but secondly, what is the department able to achieve? And so we've got to balance that, obviously, because what is necessary needs to link to what is important to preserve life and property. And so the department, with its technical people, needs to come to a middle road there in respect of making sure that it is something that can be done, but it's not something that is left too long where there's endangerment, because these premises are being used by children, by learners, by educators, as well as by other stakeholders. Then in respect of research in other parts of the country, Chair, the PSA has not undertaken research on this particular issue in other parts of the country. As I always say, the Public Service Commission is one commission, and we're responsible for these things overall. However, I think one must just be very careful, and I always say this when I meet with departments, to try to, when one sees a challenge, then one compares. It is sometimes a useful exercise, but if it's an exercise where we are saying we are doing better than, then it's a challenge for me. Then one would rather have, what is the yardstick that one uses? What is the benchmark? Have an independent benchmark, independent of what other provinces are doing. What is the benchmark? And measure oneself against that benchmark that you set. So no, there hasn't been other research, but just that sort of caveat. Chairperson, the direct link that the principals have is with the department in respect of emergency repairs would be in respect of the CMIS system. And I think just to give some further background, I'll just ask Paul Rockman just to elaborate as well. Okay.
Thank you, Chairperson and members. So yes, the direct link with the department is via the system. A very efficient system, one that captures all the information, allows principals to relay their concerns, and also allows them to actually take pictures and upload that. Where the system falls short is that on the other side of that system, we need a warm body with a voice and ears and eyes. And I think that's where principals feel alone, that yes, they've logged it onto the system, and after that, they remain prayerful that somebody is going to call them back. And I think that's where it collapses. So we're certainly saying, and we need to stress that point, first contact is important. It provides assurance that somebody's dealing with it, gives the principal confidence that there's somebody on the other side of the line that he can contact. And I think that's the other part, and I'm hoping our dear Ms. McGlenn is listening very carefully, that it is about this. The principal has only access back to the system to check where the progress is. And we simply, it's the question to the principal during interviews was to say, is there a name of somebody? Is there a number? And when you call that number, can you interact with that person as to where your case is? The consistent answer to that was no. And we're simply raising that as a particular failure because we do believe that kind of follow-up is absolutely necessary. If I could just supplement on all the points that Commissioner Questions indicated, because there was multiple questions about understanding the SOPs. And I think just to demonstrate whether principals understand the SOPs, yes or no. The first question we had is, what is an emergency repair? And that answer to that question from principals would be varied. A principal would imagine that a gap in his fencing would constitute an emergency repair. Yes, I think we all will be very concerned that there's a gap in the fence and, you know, crime and access and so forth. But does it fulfill the definition? Another principal would say, well, you know, this leaking pipe here and the water's going into the quad. To one principal, that is an emergency repair. To the department, they are very strict about, is this threatening life and limb? I think that's the standard, and that's the understanding that generally all of us must subscribe to and understand. So for instance, the figures tell a story about understanding. Between 2017 and 2019, there were 2,344 requests for emergency repairs. The department evaluated all those requests, and only 880, so a third of requests were approved. So the principals see one reality. Department of the evaluation has obviously assessed and said, well, your emergency is not an emergency in our eyes. And hence you've got a third of applications being approved for emergency. So I'm highlighting that statistic just to show that gap in understanding, Chairperson. Yeah, so maybe we could leave it at that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Is that the responses to all the questions posed to you?
Yes, yes, Chairperson, unless you observe that there's one or two that we haven't answered.
I want to then move to the to Ms. McGlenn to highlight some responses.
Member Sayed, I just lost you for a minute when you were asking your question. I got that it was something to do with the principal. Is it also that the principals are not clear with the SOP, or I just lost connection?
Yes, it is in that vein. Yes,
okay.
It is.
So
Why
I'm going to answer. Okay, I'm going to answer all of the SOP, the SOP questions. I think a lot of it is, as the PSC explained, you know, it was an opportunity for the principals to give their perspective, their view on certain things, and so they answered it purely from their perspective. The SOP was sent out, and every time it is revised, it's sent out via a circular to all schools. So I think it is opportunistic to say, you know, if they haven't read it, if they got it, if they didn't read the circular, you know, and so I've raised it at the principals forum as well and asked, you know, principals to just encourage other and to discuss it in their areas and their districts so that people can become more aware of it. So we will have to, you know, find platforms for the district maybe to engage when they engage with principals, to just bring this up as a topic on an agenda that can have 15 minutes, but just allow for some discussion around it and for people to raise what is not clear and what they don't understand. But I mean, the SOP was sent out in a circular to all principals. Maybe, I mean, there is a lot of communication, especially now in a time of COVID, you know, there's a lot issued to schools and maybe the SOP was not seen as something that is a top priority. So to all the questions, there were a couple of questions about the SOP, and I'll see what we can do to better, you know, to just get principals to understand it and become more familiar with it. Member Bosman, you asked about how can schools inform of an emergency on CMIS, and there is an emergency team and various numbers. Each district has a works inspector as well. So if something happens during the day, they should log it on CMIS and contact the district inspector. There is a warm body at head office, but the CMIS system logs the call and does, I mean, the status is updated. We've really done a lot to improve that. You see, if there isn't movement, that's seen as, you know, there isn't a response. So the CMIS system is regularly updated. If the it takes 24 hours to classify the emergency. So as was quoted of the, you know, if it's not classified as an emergency, within 24 hours the system will tell you, and it will tell you why in detail that is not an emergency. We have included in the latest version of the SOP, we have looked at the definition to make it clearer, and we do explain to people telephonically all the time, you know, that we cannot accommodate a piece of missing fence. Fencing is the most popular request. The fencing is stolen and the school expects it to be replaced. This is a matter of life and death and functionality at the school. Can the school function if it's not repaired, or do we have to close the school? No water, no sanitation, no electricity to a certain extent. I mean, during exams, perhaps you do need the electricity. So can the school function, or does the school need to be closed if this isn't dealt with immediately? So there is a very definite, and we've tried to broaden, and we're also working very closely with safe schools who also have budget constraints, but small portions of fencing, they are able to assist with school. We had a school recently where a portion of the fence was missing. Because there were some health implications, we agreed to replace that portion of the fence. Before we could get there to replace it or even assess the work, the whole fence was stolen. Now that, I mean, cannot be dealt with under this emergency program. So, I mean, we're not always, the answer is not always yes. And then that's where a lot of the dissatisfaction arises with the principals. So I think clarity and better communication is the answer. The answer, I think Member Brinke has asked about the Mitchellsplan High School fence. We have responded that that's not an emergency and it's not on any of our fencing lists. However, every fencing request that comes in goes onto a list, is assessed and prioritized, so that if any funding becomes available under the fencing program, we do have a list which is ready to be acted on. So it's not that nothing will be done. We do take note of it, but for now, that fence is not in any of our current programs. The response times to the principals, I did respond to previously. So besides the status, there is a team of people, but I can't say in the SOP, I can't include in the SOP that the SEMA system is the platform to report and to look at the status and updates, as well as a person. That system does get updated. It does work. As I explained, we also have humans. We have warm bodies that can assist. And I do understand people want to talk to a person. We do not have sufficient human resources to make it an in-person contact, you know, and then people are going to say no, but they can't get hold of. So that is a supplementary response, and we try to prioritize, and the emergencies we have the personnel deal with. But this, it is the platform to report is the SEMA's platform. It is updated. And then just on the schools, I did also respond, Member Allen, to the schools implementing the emergency maintenance themselves. We are in talks with Treasury. As I said, Treasury is the one who have given the instruction that Public Works will implement. And then where the funding sits and how the funding will be transferred to schools to make that possible is just something that we will need to resolve. So that is something that we are currently tackling at the moment. Thanks. That's my response, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goosen, Mr. Rockman, and Ms. McGlynn for that responses to our round of questions. And Ms. McGlynn, if this is the time where you say goodbye to us to join your other meeting, then I want to say thank you very much for availing yourself to this meeting this afternoon. Members,
thank you very
much. Sure, Ms.
Thank
McGlynn.
you very much. Yes. Yes, thank you very much, Chairperson and colleagues. I will be exiting now. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Keeping cognizance of time, we have 2 other presentations to get to, plus a Q&A. So I am immediately then also giving over to Mr. Goosen so that we can start with the next 2 presentations.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'm just having the presentation flighted. Thank you. Sorry for the delay. It's just we're having some technical challenges to flight and get the things in order. Chairperson, so the 2 further presentations, and the first one relates to the Shribota School. This one relates to an anonymous complaint received. So part of our mandate as the Public Service Commission is to receive and investigate complaints in relation to maladministration, corruption, and fraud. And so an allegation was received, an anonymous complaint in February 2020. And in essence, a number of allegations were made. Firstly, that in respect of the school, that funds were unaccounted for, an amount of 26,000 was apparently paid into an incorrect account over a period of 5 years. This amount of 26,000, that's the cumulative amount. That there were service providers with links to the school that were being utilized, preference being given to certain service providers, no full disclosure of financial affairs. This is now to the governing body, school governing body. High staff turnover, that employment equity is not applied when making appointments of staff, that union representatives are involved in shortlisting of interviewed candidates as opposed to merely being observers, and something similar, that during shortlisting and interview process, WCD representatives form as part of the deliberation process as opposed to only observing. Then there was also issues of allegations of intimidation of staff by the principal, that there are disciplinary hearings are being held without the knowledge of the school governing body, and this is in relation particularly to employees, SGB employees, and that a post-level 1 educator, that's the entry-level educator, was given preference above experienced heads of department to act as deputy principal. So there were interviews conducted with the principal, with the chair of the SGB, and with the parent component of the SGB, and with randomly selected staff members. Documentary evidence was obtained, transactions were sampled and tested against the school finance policy. And then a number of findings were made. Firstly, in relation to the allegation of the 26,000 Rand paid into the incorrect account. The school is the PSC is satisfied that disciplinary action was taken by the department against the principal. There is no evidence, however, at the stage of the report that the school or the department took disciplinary action against the financial officer as the capturer for her role in the transgression. The PSC recommended that the financial officer be disciplined. In essence, what happened here was that there was a situation where educators would purchase certain things that they needed, and they would then request refunds. And somebody by the name of Mrs. A teacher, had done that and requested refunds. However, the monies were paid across to a different Mrs. A, who was no longer an employee at the school, and this had been the case for 5 years. So that was an error on the part of the finance officer, but also the principal hadn't detected that error. Hence, she'd been disciplined. Then the allegation that service providers with links to the schools are utilized. This is not substantiated. The allegation relating to preference given to certain service providers is also not substantiated. Allegation of no full disclosure of financial affairs is substantiated, as the principal only informs the SGB about financial matters after the fact. So after certain things, and there was an issue relating to obtaining bank statements and getting the information, there seemed to have been a reluctance there on the part of the principal. The allegation of high staff turnover was found to be substantiated, but it cannot conclusively be stated that the reasons for the turnover relates to poor working conditions at the school. The allegation relating to employment equity in relation to appointments is substantiated, and the school is encouraged to put in place a plan to ensure transformation of staff as regards to race in particular. The allegation that union representatives be involved in shortlisting of interview candidates, as opposed to only observing, found to be substantiated. The allegation that WCED representatives are involved in the selection of staff is unsubstantiated. The allegation that disciplinary hearings are held without the knowledge of the SGB is substantiated. Very important, because this implications could have financial implications if incorrect decisions, disciplinary decisions are made. It's implications for the SGB. The process followed by the principal in the appointment of a level 1 educator to act as deputy principal was procedurally correct. However, this was done in terms of the relevant circular, the WCD 2 of 2018, but this paragraph was not intended to be used by schools in the manner that it was utilized by the principal at Sherry Water School. One would imagine that this paragraph allows for deviation. One would imagine that such a deviation is necessary in the case of no HOD being available due to illness, leave, or incapacity. And it would be helpful for the department to unpack the circumstances under which a deviation is valid. In this instance, I think the principal indicates something to the effect that the other HOD had already had the opportunity to act, and she wanted to give a post-level 1 person the opportunity to act. And as I mentioned there, this doesn't seem to be the intention of this paragraph. Well, but procedurally it was satisfactory. The principal should be reorientated regarding her role and function vis-a-vis the role and function of the SGB, and that the circuit manager oversees the process. The principal and SGB must ensure that the financial control measures at the school are reviewed and that all financial transactions are governed by the appropriate authorities and delegation. And the principal should also timeously inform the SGB of all relevant financial matters. The financial officer must be disciplined. In addition, the amounts incorrectly paid to the administrative clerk, this is the person who had already left the employ of the school and would be receiving this monies, must be recouped. The principal must follow the ordinary procurement process in obtaining 3 quotations from service providers when goods and services are procured. It would be necessary to source entirely new service providers on occasion in order to promote competitiveness and openness. The principal must pursue employment equity targets in new appointments at the school as a matter of principle and in accordance with policy. The principal must inform the SGB when formal disciplinary action is being contemplated in accordance with the governance arrangements involving SGBs. And then the department ought to clarify the circumstances under which a deviation is valid in terms of the provisions of the Circular 2 of 2018, I think it is, paragraph 2.1d. Then the department, once again, as we always do with all our reports, we send it to the department and to the minister, and we receive feedback relating to how the department has implemented the recommendations, and this at the day when this feedback was received, the following. The head education instructed the Metro East District to ensure that the principal be reorientated regarding her role and function vis-a-vis the role of the SGB, and that the circuit manager will oversee this. The head is instructed the Metro East District to ensure the role and responsibilities of the principal and SGB are brought to their attention, with emphasis on 1, ensuring financial control measures, financial policy, and so on, are reviewed. Secondly, that financial transactions are governed by the appropriate authorities and delegations. And thirdly, the principal should timeously inform the SGB of all financial matters. Then the head education instructed the Metro East District to ensure the SGB is consulted on the recovery of the amount incorrectly paid to the erstwhile administrative clerk, and the Director of Employee Relations to pursue disciplinary action against the financial officer. The district was instructed to ensure that the roles and responsibilities of the principal and SGB are brought to their attention, with emphasis on the normal procurement process in obtaining 3 quotations, and that is necessary to, on occasion, source new suppliers, service providers. The head also instructed Metro East to ensure that the principal pursues and applies employment equity targets in new appointments at the school as a matter of principles in accordance with policies, and again that the recruitment and selection minutes 4 of 18 and the employment equity plan of 2018 to 2023 be brought to the attention of the principal. Is being taken in accordance with governance arrangements involving SGB staff members. Then the head instructed Chief Director of People Management to clarify circumstances under which the deviation is valid in terms of minute 2 of 2018, paragraph 2.1d. And then education head wrote to the SGB with a view to ensuring the efficient and effective implementation of the PSC recommendations. Chair, I do need to note that this report was issued shortly before the term of the governing body came to an end. And I know there was some issue as to whether a new governing body was going to be appointed or not, or going to be elected or not, given that there's some arrangement in terms of combining of schools or something to that effect. But I note that the district director is here, so I'm just raising that caveat that this relates to the previous governing body, and I'm not sure to what extent this would have been digested by a new governing body, if any. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we're moving on to the second presentation as well.
Okay, if I could just get some water. Okay, so the next report relates to a complaint lodged with the National Anti-Corruption Hotline, and this is a hotline which by default, in a sense, has become the responsibility of the Public Service Commission by direction of through a cabinet directive, a cabinet minute. And from the case number, we can see that this case was first reported in 2017. Chair, I must say at the outset that when I took office in October 2018, I was extremely concerned with this case and the manner in which it was dealt with. The manner, the way in which we generally deal with National Anti-Corruption Hotline or NAG cases is that allegations are made and the allegations are then sent to the department for investigation. And we then wait feedback, and we then look at the feedback and the reports, and it would then serve before a panel of commissioners. And I could not, in good conscience, allow the report that came from the department at that stage to be presented to a panel, because I could not support any recommendations that were made. I wasn't satisfied that a proper investigation had taken place. Subsequent to that, a number of things happened, and we'll go through that. And the department has since been fully on board, and we cooperated very well in terms of us doing and finalizing the investigation. But I need to point out that initially there was challenges in relation to this matter. So the allegations that were first made, and again, I need to say at the outset that when we receive complaints as a PSC, I always stress that we receive complaints and we receive allegations, but we cannot be blind, Chairperson, to peripheral issues which come up. Because when a whistleblower makes allegations, they make allegations on the basis of information that they have. But while an investigation is ongoing, other irregularities or challenges might present itself. And my stance has always been that we need to be developmental in our approach, and we cannot ignore peripheral issues which come up, which is relevant in relation to complaints. So the allegations initially made was that the principal's son had been appointed as the IT technician and later as security officer at the school. The principal's friend was then appointed as the IT technician after the son vacated his post. The school had established a trust in 1985 and continues to manage the trust to date. The principal was unduly benefiting from the trust fund, that he was being paid a management fee that was not approved by the SGB. The chairperson of the SGB was unduly benefiting from the trust fund, whether monetary or not, or either monetary by monetary means or by not paying school fees for the past few years. The bursar was unduly benefiting from the trust account as she was doing the payments and receiving compensation within salary increases and or monthly or annual payments. That the principal is unduly benefiting from the trust as he was promoted without cause. Parents, bear in mind, Chairperson, these are sometimes taken verbatim as the reports are given to call center agents. Parents of learners who attend the school made cash payments in terms of school fees to the bursar. When they reviewed their school accounts, certain irregularities were identified. So the investigation included, this is now after there'd been an initial investigation by the department, which I wasn't satisfied with. So all relevant persons were interviewed: complainants, principal, SGB members, financial officer, members of staff, deputy principals. The PSC consulted 2 previous Metro Central Education District reports on the matter. And the report that was approved by the commission, the panel, was on the 2nd December 2020. We need to note the inordinate delay in concluding the investigation. It was reported in 2017, and then, of course, there was interaction between myself and the department in order to make sure, and with my officials, to make sure that the matter is finalized. So we conducted a joint investigation between August 2020 and September 2020. This is jointly with the department. So there are some of the findings and recommendations relating to the appointment of the principal's son as IT technician. Indeed, he was appointed by the SGB. He had no formal qualifications, but he was able to do the job. During 2015, the SGB decided to appoint a full-time security officer at the school. At the SGB meeting on the 14th of the 9th, 2015, a certain teacher proposed the principal's son for the position. It was seconded by another person and unanimously accepted by the SGB. Pardon me. At the SGB meeting on the 16th of the 11th, 2015, the appointment of the friend of the principal, IT maintenance person, was endorsed by the SGB. This person was interviewed. He had studied IT, but did not complete his second year of studies. He was employed for 5 hours per day. There was an agreement between this person, Mr. Z, and the school. It was authorized by the principal and witnessed by staff members. And following his appointment, Mr. Z, principal's son, was appointed as security and safety officer. So then you'll see our agreement with the recommendations, because some of it comes from the department, because it was a joint recommendation. So the PSC agrees with the recommendation that the SGB review its recruitment and selection policy, and the recommendation regarding more stringent evaluations being conducted. Also agreeing with the recommendation that the SGB chairperson should sign all employment contracts with the SGB. The investigation does not give any sanction with a warning or advice or comment on the desirability of principals employing their own staff, own family members. We are of the opinion that it is undesirable for principals to appoint family members, and this matter needs to be addressed when setting policy. Now, of course, here, it's the SGB, and this is the challenge that we have, which we discussed in a meeting with the minister and with departmental officials. The question of the undesirability, and we've had it in a number of other investigations where you've got a principal, maybe in that one instance, there was a deputy principal who was the sister and another family member. So what happens is, and sometimes employed by the department. And so the principal, recuses himself from the process and the appointment proceeds. But the question is, what does it do in respect of governance? Does it strengthen governance? Is it good practice? Is it not a recipe for disaster in respect of checks and balances in place, particularly in respect of financial issues and so on? So this is the issue which maybe the committee might deliberate on. Then the school established a trust, and trust continues to manage the school and continues to manage the trust. So the district office verified that the trust account does exist and that it is administered by the school. The report clearly advises that the trust account be closed with immediate effect. That's a much earlier report already by the department. The school operates a current account, a call account, and a trust account. And the district office, so the assessment, the district office and PC investigation in August established that the trust account was dormant and that it is not operational any longer. Then the allegation that the principal is unduly benefiting from the trust fund, that's being paid a management fee that was never approved by the SGB. So the recommendations and findings, the principal who serves on the board of trustees for the school received 546,025 Rand in payment from the trust for the period 1st month 2012 to the 12th month 2016. So in essence, for 2 years. In terms of approval, the section 38A approval, that's approval for additional remuneration for principals and educators. The principal was permitted to receive the amount of 178,750 during 2016. The school obtained approval for section 38A payments for the years 2012, 2013, 2015. The SGB chairperson has not received any payments from a trust account. The prescribed budgeting and section 38A procedure must be strictly adhered to and implemented. So the SGB, the section 38A payments relate to the SGB making payment to the principal for additional duties. It was approved by the department. It would appear that the source of the funds was from the trust account and not from the school's bank account. What is important was the section 38A process was followed. The investigation reveals that the year 2014 section 38A approval is absent in the documentation. Minutes of the trust meeting of 10 November indicates that section 38A payments were approved by the trustees. In an interview with the principal, he confirmed that the payments for his additional duties was made via the trust account. The PSC agrees with the recommendation that Section 38 approval process needs to be strictly adhered to. Chair, here's another issue, and maybe policy, even legislative issue. The question of the 38A payments. When we met with the department, you know, it's a very mechanical process as to whether an educator or principal is entitled to. Do you meet the requirements? Is it done outside of school hours, the duties, and they're disapproved, but no track record. Chairperson, this is when doing our investigations, and you'll see later when we found some fraud on the part of the bursar, ostensibly, well, she confessed. We found it was agreed, the principal agreed and mentioned that he was at current, that was last year, the principal since retired, was receiving the Section 38A payment that's additional to his salary per month, the amount of 50,000 rand. Each month, he was receiving his salary from the department, and in addition thereto, he was receiving 50,000 rand. In addition to that, the two deputies were receiving 20,000 rand each. So an amount of 15,000 each. So that amount of 80,000 rand was being paid. And the school that we are dealing with is not a very wealthy school. It's a school where on the transport, the Klipfontein corridor, where you're getting learners from townships, from the Cape Flats, who's moving out of the areas into possibly parents think a better schooling environment. And that is the amount. Question is whether these things are reviewed in the governing body or how it is reviewed. How is the budget presented? Is presented as a globular figure for SGB posts, or is this presented specifically? Just something, food for thought. Then the chairman of the SGB is unduly benefiting from the trust fund relating to payment of school fees for the past 2 years. Chairperson's son was a learner at Rhodes High during the school year 2015. Chairperson received backdated exemption of 26,368 in respective school years 2012 and 2014, an exemption of 9,900 for the year 2015 school fees. During 2016, he received an exemption to the amount of 10,956 rand. It was recommended that the backdated exemption in respect to 2012-14 must be recovered from the previous chairperson. So the assessment and findings: in an interview conducted with the principal in 2020, he explained that the previous chairperson's account of the school was running in arrears over a few years. During 2015, the SGB made a decision to write off the amount of 26,385 rand. Arrears amount. SGB assessed that this debt would not be recovered and therefore made the decision to write this off. Not an unusual practice, as many other accounts of parents are also written off where deemed necessary. Principal was asked to produce evidence of this decision, minutes of the meeting. He could not provide documentary evidence by the time it was requested. PC agrees with the findings and the recommendations only in the event that proof of the administrative decision is not forthcoming. Okay. The bursar is unduly benefiting from the trust account as she's doing the payments and receiving compensation, whether in salary increases and or yearly or monthly bonuses. So findings: the bursar received payments of 10,500, 7,000 in respect to 2013 and 2014 directly from the trust account. She produced documentation and authorized an annual allowance during the investigation. However, according to the documentation, the bursar was authorized to receive 7,000 for 2013 and 9,500 in respect of 2014. The bursar's contract does not allow for the receiving of other allowances. It was recommended that the overpayment of 3,500 to the bursar be recovered. Principal failed to provide documentary proof of trustee minutes approving the payment to the bursar by the time it was requested. PC agrees with the findings. The principal's son's unduly benefited from the trust as he was promoted without cause. Principal's son received an amount of 7,500 from the trust fund in respect of a raffle on 4th of December. The payment was for duties according to the assessment, duties connected to his appointment as a safety officer, and we're satisfied with the finding. The overall findings: the bursar committed fraud and theft was in the employ of Rhodes High School. The school fees of parents with the learners, the school was stolen. This she confessed to, and again, just a challenge, just again to put out there that this came from 2017 when my investigators went to the school. They are not forensic people or ex-police or anything. They managed on the first occasion to interview her, and she confessed to theft of monies. The principal was negligent in his supervisory duties in that he did not institute proper controls and detect any of the fraudulent activities over a number of years. The SGB failed in their overall duty to perform appropriate auditing of the finances and to ensure that the fraud and corruption is prevented. Principal and the SGB as a whole failed in their duty to investigate complaints about financial irregularities. There had been complaints over a number of years, especially about parents who've paid and it hasn't been credited to the account, etc. There had been complaints. WCD failed in their duty to investigate complaints about financial irregularities at Rhodes High School. Again, there'd been complaints coming over a number of years. The case must be lodged with SAPS regarding fraud committed by the bursar. The PC has established that the case was lodged, and the bursar has since resigned. I must just say I'm having endless difficulties. On my insistence, I'm insistent that my officials follow up with SAPS, because although the amount that she confessed to is about 80,000 Rand, my suspicion is that she's the fall person. The fall person, in other words, she's taken the fall. There's other allegations, and I'm insistent that even though there's allegations that she's paying back the money, that she be prosecuted. And unfortunately, SAPS hasn't been very helpful. I've since made contact with the NPA to make sure that this case is thoroughly investigated. A full investigation must be taken by the SGB to determine the extent of fraud and theft committed by the bursar over the past 3 years, because she committed to 2 acts only, and she's been there for a long period of time, over 10 years. The department needs to determine whether further action must be taken against the principal lack of oversight in financial matters, which resulted in financial loss to the school, while the principal has since retired. We also requested that a full forensic investigation needs to be conducted under the auspices of WCD and the Provincial Forensic Services, which spans the tenure of the principal. So the update, of course, that was open in Mowbray. They've indicated it's transferred to commercial crimes. I'm with the NPA commercial specialized commercial crimes unit. They're trying to trace where this docket is. There didn't seem to be an appetite for it. I must be honest with SAPS. Versus resigned. The money is recovered that she confessed to from even the Provident Fund or Pension Fund. She was employed by the SGB. The recommendation regarding further action against the principal was not implemented as he retired, and the department requested Provincial Forensic Services to perform a full forensic investigation spanning the tenure of the principal, and they're currently busy. Have they got terms of reference already? They have terms of reference, and they're busy with the investigation. Just some ethical issues to throw out the chairperson. This issue of a competent SGB treasurer, important. The question whether the department looks at the competence of school treasurers. The principals are in a position of power in respect of governing bodies, particularly in schools, where there are not many competent, skilled people. Section 38 payments. The regulatory framework is very rudimentary, not rudimentary, it is very mechanical. But it seems to be free. Also, one principal can be earning 50,000 Rand a month extra. The question of principals and their family members on the staff. I mean, that creates ethical dilemmas. The approach to the department is that, obviously, we're dealing with what we already have in terms of the regulatory framework. There's nothing that says it's not possible. But that doesn't mean that there cannot be ethical dilemmas. Are these not issues that need to be discussed from a policy point of view or considered from a policy point of view? Chairperson, that is my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goosen, for that comprehensive presentation. The department, and I'm not sure, you have to indicate to me now in regards to your response presentation, who will be doing that?
Honorable Botha, I will be doing not a presentation, but we will respond in terms of what we have done after we have received the PSC's recommendations.
Okay, so you will talk to the presentation that we have received from the
Yes.
department. Okay, Mr. Lani, continue.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon again, colleagues. I think I need to start with, we will start with Sherry Botha first, and then we will relate to Rhodes High School. Just in terms of, I think, and we have to we are very grateful for the support we're receiving from the PSC in terms of highlighting certain corrupt activities within schools, financial mismanagement, etc. We have, as a department, developed a few strategic actions that we are taking to address it. The first one is that we are having quarterly meetings between us and the forensic services, for example, to update the department and our district officers on cases and where the potential risks are and what preventative measures we can put in place to address those risks. I think importantly also, we have a biannual meeting between the forensic services, the Directorate Internal Control, as well as our district staff responsible for investigating financial mismanagement. I think one of the issues that we have raised with the forensic is that our district staff are not forensic investigators. So sometimes it's not so easy for them to be able to detect if there is financial mismanagement. And we have undergone and undertaken with the key role players at the district, we have done basic investigation skills, what it is that they need to do. But also at the last meeting that we held with our district officers, we looked at the business processes for reporting on financial mismanagement. What is it? How much? What are the processes? Because some of it takes too long to resolve, and we would want to fast track when a fraud or corruption is detected. Also, forensic services have made the observations relating to the school-based referrals available, and we shared it with us, where they highlighted some of the tendencies that they have seen over the last 5 years. Also, importantly, is the trends in terms of the cases have been reported, and that is being tracked by our Directorate Internal Control to look at what are the trends in order to put prevention measures in place. Also, importantly for us on a strategic level is to make sure that all our school finance records officers and compliance units within the district offices, all those posts are filled, and if a vacant post exists, that it's filled speedily, because they need to go and they have to go monitor what is happening within our schools. Additional actions that we have taken was that also, and it was raised by the Public Service Commission as well, we have a new group of a cohort of SCBs that were elected in April this year, and one of the first things that we have done is that we have trained, make sure that all of them are trained on fraud and corruption, and to know how to detect it and how to put actions in place, and as well as how to report it. For example, Sherry Botha's principal and finance staff attended this training on 8 May 2021. Another finance management training that is tailor-made specifically for the school is scheduled for the district for 9 September. So we have, for example, generic training, but we also have custom-made training for our schools. The training that we're looking at in terms of the fraud and corruption is enable SCBs to be able to identify what is fraud, corruption, and theft. They also focus on prevention, detection, and response, about how to report fraud and corruption, and ensure, I think critically, is that the SCBs declare any personal interest that they may have. And importantly, from a district perspective, to ensure that we have continuous monitoring by our school finance record officers and our circuit manager. Importantly also, and I think this is something that we have to highlight, that we also every year we review the annual financial statements that is provided, that is our compliance unit of the schools, and also the O43s in terms of our compliance monitoring the finances at the school. I think in terms of specifically going back to Seribota, to indicate, based on the PSC's recommendation, Madam Chair, what we have done is the circuit manager, together with the district director, has developed a management plan to address all of these key recommendations that has been highlighted by the Public Service Commission. However, and I think it's not only the election of the governing body that had a bit of influence on it. It was also the fact that the schools had to close earlier and there was an extended vacation, etc. So there was a bit of a delay, and but the management plan is on track. We hope to have implemented all the key recommendations made by the Public Service Commission before the end of this year. I think also importantly, in relating to the finance officer at the school, that was referred to our Directorate Employee Relations. And what has happened is that it was found that the implicated finance officer is an SGB employee, and they could therefore not institute any disciplinary actions against her. But the circuit manager is currently busy with the newly elected SGB to guide them on in terms of how they need to make sure that appropriate action is taken against her. That is scheduled for the 26th, that is on Thursday. So that is being put in place. And then in terms of Rhodes High School, a number of actions has been taken in place. And I have to say that where I don't agree with what the PSC is that a number of proactive actions were taken by our Metro Central District Office to make sure that some of these issues are addressed. Some of the actions that the district has, for example, taken was that the trust account is no longer operational. They have reviewed the recruitment and selection policy. They reviewed the school fee exemption policy. They reviewed the process of the 8A applications for additional remuneration that was highlighted by the PSC. The HEB also recovered an amount of 81,730 from the pension of the person, and this amount was uncovered to have been mismanaged during the investigation that was found. And then the SCB of the school also reported that the finance mismanagement part of the BURSA was reported at SAPS, and the case number, as indicated by the PSC, has been opened as well. So those are some of the issues that has been, or the actions that have been taken by the department. Over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lani. Members, I'm going to open up for a round of questions to both the department or to the PSC. I just want to remind you to please keep in the scope of the presentations that we have had. So I'm opening up for a round of questions. Any hands? Member Christians.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think the report is quite comprehensive, and it's not a question, it's just a comment that I think also appropriate action was taken by the WCED to put certain measures in place in order to combat maladministration or fraud. And I think it's it's a work in progress and getting there, but it's also maybe the question is just, I know some of these things were reported via hotline and anonymous people phoning in. So but like I said, it's work in progress. I just want to find out, can the department detect these irregularities or fraud or maladministration with their internal processes? And we know, there is internal process that you're supposed to pick when you talk about internal audit and those type of things. You're supposed to pick up these maladministration or whatever it is. So it's a work in progress. Just if the department don't get via the hotline or via somebody reporting them, can they pick it up? And I know the additional stuff that Mr. Lania said. In future now, will they pick up these type of things? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Christians. Yes, I'm also in your vein, in your line of question, and I want to ask the measures that were put in place, is it enough? Are you satisfied to pick up the risk going forward for those who would want to do the same as we have had here? Thanks. Member Sayed?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Chair, I must say it's really, really, really startling what we've just heard. And I don't think, and maybe the department must give us some more info, I don't think that the measures are sufficient. Quite honestly, given what the PSC has just said, given what we've picked up. In fact, I wanted to get a sense from the PSC, firstly, before getting just into this school. Can the PSC probably provide us with guidance as to how we as members, because this is what we've been getting around many other schools, how can we as members forward these similar type of allegations that we receive? What is the process in terms of the PSC to send them to the PSC, particularly around SGBs? I just wanted to get a sense of that. But also, do we have, I mean, just in terms of the disciplinary action that was taken against the principal and this type of thing, is it concerning or lack thereof? Is the PSC concerned? What is the PSC's view? Because it's not the first time we've seen this at the school. What is the PSC's view around the principal being allowed to retire while still under investigation? And what progress has been made with regards to the PFS investigation? I wanted to get a sense of that. And then also the issue around, and I know with regards to the whole SAPS matter, I'm glad that some further follow-up and further action is taking place. Would the PSC also consider recommending the opening of a criminal case against the principal and various other measures to recuperate those trust funds? Because this is just, I mean, this is just a shambles, what has taken place here, Chair. I think that will be it for now.
Thank you very much. I just want to check with the PSC also. Well, in regard to these money stolen, how has it impacted on the learners? And if it has impacted on learners, what was that impact? Did you pick this up in your investigation? And then that is the round of questions for now. Thank you.
Chairperson, thank you very much for the opportunity to respond. Firstly, in relation to the department, yes, I can really say that in the last year and a bit, I've really had the full cooperation from the department in respect of the Rhodes High School. I did. However, I was absolutely flabbergasted when I arrived at the PSC in 2018 to be presented by my staff with a report from the department, which basically all these allegations and findings that has now been made was not made in respect of that school. And I'm glad that Mr. Lani is now saying that these people are going for training investigators, because I know that is a capacity challenge. But it is a challenge when one gets a report which sort of, in a sense, whitewashes which is what is clearly irregular activity, which is masked in a particular manner. I don't know, maybe because of my legal background, I have that insight to see these things, but I saw it, and that is why I persisted. We could have presented that report to panel and we could have pushed it through, but I refused to do so. So unfortunately, the first part of the complaint that was made to the National Anti-Corruption Hotline, the department, I'm sorry to say, failed in its responsibility in respect of oversight. I've got to say that. It redeemed itself, and the department then assisted us admirably in the last few months and year to resolve that. I assume the internal processes would be aimed in at the department. Then the question of, as well as the issue of the measures that was raised by Honourable Botha. But then to come to members say it. Do we think the measures are sufficient? Again, I cannot respond to the department's internals, but to get a sense from us regarding guidance for the members as to how to take this matters forward. Chairperson, I'm also going to get our details will be shared in terms of how to report. I mean, in essence, we can report via email, via our office. There is the anti-corruption hotline, but people can report directly to us, and we'll share email details and so on with members. As regards to taking the matter forward, is our view around the principal being allowed to retire. He had reached retirement age, and so those kinds of things are regulated areas in terms of the Public Service Act and regulations. And currently, that is something that is permissible. Regarding the laying of criminal charges, the challenge we've got is that, from my point of view, everything at the school, there are all these red flags going over the years and reports and things. And now we scratch hard enough, and we find a bursar not confessing, not maladministering, confessing to actually taking the money, confessing to theft to our investigators. So we've got all these red flags, and then that happens. So indications are that there is more to this. We don't have at this stage sufficient in order to say, let's lay a criminal charge against the principal. Hence, we've asked for the forensic audit span his tenure at the school. I had at one stage, because I insisted on the SGB and the principal laying a criminal charge, and I said, and I wrote to the department, and I said that if this is not done, I will then ensure that my provincial director goes and lay a charge in respect of everybody who knew about this, who came to know about the theft, because in terms of the PRECA Act, Prevention of Corrupt Activities Act, those people are liable criminally. So I threatened to do that. Fortunately, a charge was laid. But in terms of other issues, fraud and corruption and those things, we don't, certainly from my point of view, I don't think we've got sufficient. And therefore, I think it is something that requires a forensic audit, a full forensic audit. Hence, the matter is sitting with Provincial Forensic Services. But yes, there are all these warning signs that there is more to this, and hence my position that, the bursar confessing to taking payment on 2 occasions to the tune of 80,000 Rand, and whereas she was employed for 10 years, it must be only the tip of the iceberg. Then I just want to mention also, in respect of Honourable Botha's last comment, in respect of the 80,000 and how it impacted on the learners. Chair, we're not sure. We don't know, because we're not in the governance space and we're not in the space of the finances of the school. But one could just imagine, in the report, one would see that there was indication that many people are in arrears. There had to be write-offs and people are in arrears, etc. So while it might not directly have impacted the learners, 80,000 Rand could have impacted a staff member that's employed who is no longer employed, couldn't be employed, one less educator employed by the school governing body. It could have. We're speculating here. I can't say directly, not being involved in the finance and the budget and so on of the school. But again, I want to say to members, I think this is an area in respect of governing body issues and how finances are managed there, because it's not money that comes from the public purse. It doesn't come from the provincial department, but it's still money that comes out of the public. It's people who are paying school fees. And so very often, in fact, in our meeting with the department, the approach was, look, we don't have control over that. There's a governance framework set in place in terms of the South African Schools Act. And so the question is, can provincial departments, for example, go further and regulate it? There was a scene in that meeting with the former SG who was present. He was saying, but we can legally, they're going to challenge us. The governing body is going to challenge us. We know governing bodies are contested terrain. And they're going to challenge us because we're encroaching on their independence and so on. But surely there must be something put in place to safeguard monies that come from the public, and where we know that there are frameworks in place, but there's somebody like a principal who is in a very, very strong position of power, particularly in communities where people are not educated, not financially literate, and so to educate, to empower via training is fine, but what do we put in place, as correctly was raised, measures that the department can detect these issues? I don't know. It's a discussion. I think that is much broader than just this report. But that I think I've covered the questions that we are able to cover, Chairperson, from the PSC side.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goosen. Member Said, is that another question that you want to ask? Because I just want to give an opportunity for those questions asked in the previous round. I want to give an opportunity to Mr. Lani if he wants to respond before I get to you with your follow-up.
No, it's fine. That's fine. Mine was a follow-up, but I'll get to it after he's done. That's fine.
Okay. Mr. Lani, is there anything that you want to add, sir, in regard to the responses that we have received on that round of questions?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to, before I respond on the questions that was posed to us, I just want to add to the question around the monies that are taken and what is the impact on the learners. I think it has got a huge impact on learners if monies are stolen at the school. And if you look at certain types of schools, it will result in terms of our fee-paying schools or fee-charging schools. If monies are not utilized for the intended purposes, what happens is a burden is then put on the parents, and they will, by the school increasing the school fees of the school, more parents that are there that are unable to afford the school fees, having to apply for an exemption, etc. And what I want to say is that it has an impact on the school. Also, in terms of the resourcing of the learners, they won't have access to certain resources. In some of our cases, for example, and this is part of our fraud and corruption training, we show them evidence of how it impacts, for example, on certain basic things like textbooks that learners have to be provided, and the school cannot afford now. It's going on the burden on the parents, etc., in addition to what the school fees that they need to pay. So I just wanted to add on to what the PSC has indicated. And the question that was raised for us to respond to is about can we detect with our internal processes? I just want to start off by saying that we have a zero tolerance against any form of fraud and corruption, and we have our processes in place. In a lot of cases, we do detect the fraud and the corruption that is happening, and we would want to have more, and that's why we are strengthening our own internal processes. As I indicated, we have our school finance records officers. We're capacitating them to have a more meaningful role in terms of detecting it, and we have a compliance unit. So we really depend on them to be able to, and we are busy with the capacitation, the investigation skills, etc. I think importantly also, in terms of our own internal processes that we have, hence we have started with the fraud and corruption awareness training for our new, because at the end of the day, the impact have to be felt at school level. Our governing body members have to be able to see and understand what is considered fraud and corruption, so that they can be able to report it if they do see it. Also importantly is that what we have found and what is coming out from the questions that we had, I think, 34 sessions already since the newly governing bodies were elected. So we had 2.5-hour sessions during the week and a Saturday, and a lot of feedback is also being provided by the governing body members in terms of how they see certain things. And most importantly for us is to make sure that they understand what it is that they need to put in place. We also, in West Coast, we started, and we're going to do this in all the other districts before the end of the year. We have put together a chairpersons forum. That is chairpersons with a forum only for chairpersons where we discuss issues impacting on the chairperson of the schools to strengthen their hand also as chairpersons. And one of our key drivers there is to make sure that they play a more leading role in terms of the finance subcommittee at the school, so that we have oversight from the governing body as well as the district level. So that is just in response of that question, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lani. Member Sayed, your follow-up.
Chair, thank you, Chair. Chair, I just wanted to ask the department, is the department aware, given the fact that this, I mean, clearly the PSC indicated that this corruption does impact on learners in terms of the ability for proper learning to take place, in terms of resources. Is the department aware of the fact that this school, Rhodes High School, has actually increased the school fees drastically, especially after this particular incident has taken place? Then I just wanted to know from the PSC, they indicated earlier that the initial report that they got before the department, actually, and we must commend the department, did some of the corrective ways and then were basically cooperating well with the PSC. The Commissioner Goosen spoke about, and the exact words, if I can get to my notes, the exact words were, he spoke about irregular activity being masked. If Commissioner Goosen can possibly just go into that, because I'm not necessarily wanting to pick purely on this situation, but it probably gives also the department possibly some guidance in terms of how to look at future cases or even current cases at other schools without it being viewed as being masked, as they're masking irregular activities. They can actually deal with the issues in a much better way. Also, the PSC could probably also indicate what is radically different between the manner in which the department has been dealing with the matter now compared to 2018, and how can the difference between the two, the positive strides made, how can that be used to deal with other cases of this nature? Thank you.
I thought that the PSC has indicated in the presentation how that relationship has evolved or developed over the time. But I will give to the department, or I'll give to Mr. Goosen first, before I give to the department on the questions posed by Member Said. Mr. Goosen.
Chairperson, yes. When I talk about masks, I talk in a very, very figurative sense, especially in relation to this matter. Allegations were primarily from the start directed at the principal's conduct. There was issues relating to the bursa, but it was related to the principal's conduct. Maybe I'm bringing some of my criminal justice background into this as well. And now, at the end of the day, when there's now pressure and the questions are being asked, direct questions, suddenly you've got the bursa who admits to a limited transgression. You see, also in the governing body meetings, you will see, for example, something like the principal's son. So principal, very, very wise, doesn't participate. His son is nominated by an educator or by a parent or whatever else. That decision goes through. He is nowhere to be found. And so it's sort of masked in irregularity. It's given that regular as if it's been done, but there could be things going in the background, which is very difficult to put one's finger on. Just in terms of the the difference in terms of the department's approach now and previously, we've had a number of engagements with people, and we've taken the stance where investigators, precisely because of what Mr. Lani says, they're not investigators, circuit managers and so on. So we've called them in and we said to them, why did you ask these questions? So the approach, I think, and the difference is that sometimes investigators go in with a compliance mindset. Have you complied? Tick the box, but do not scratch any further. Sometimes deliberately, because the investigator is not equipped to deal with what to do when he finds something different. And also the approach to go, I must say that I find this with internal investigators, to go in, and principals might say something different, but they go in with a mindset to, in a sense, disprove the allegation that has been made. So from our point of view, where we start with, there is an allegation. While I do not presume anybody guilty, there's an allegation, and we need to investigate the allegation thoroughly. So if there is an allegation, for example, against a circuit manager, we don't go and ask the circuit manager. We first get our surrounding, our supporting material, your documentary evidence. Now we confront the circuit manager because we've got information. Rather than going in, speaking to the person, and the person and the principal, for example, in a great position to change things, have the ability to fabricate. And we find this in some instances, fabrication of governing body minute meetings, etc., etc. So the thing is not compliance-based. It's a different kind of investigation. And secondly, let's not go in with the intention to disprove the allegation that has been made. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, sir. I note the hand of Mr. Alan Meyer. Welcome to this meeting, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon, members, and Mr. Quisson and the members of the PSC as well. Chair, Advocate Quisson raises a number of significant issues, and I think as a department we are extremely appreciative of the comments that he's making, because it is true. We do not necessarily have that kind of investigative, investigator within our department as a person or as a function, and perhaps it is something that I would like to take further discussions with Advocate Quisson and see how, perhaps with his team that he has access to, for us to be able to have a briefing session, perhaps with some of our officials. I'll definitely want to take him up on that if there is such an offer from his side. The other technical questions Mr. Lani will speak to, but I just thought I wanted to mention that I'd like to utilize the opportunity to ask Advocate Quisson if we could get access to some of his investigators, to be able to do a training session with some of our staff, because as I said, he makes a very valid point about, the techniques of an investigation, and I think we can only learn from that. So I would appreciate, that opportunity. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Mr. Lani.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer, and thank you, Madam Chair. Just in terms of the question relating of Honourable Member Sayed, relating to the school fees, if the school fees of Rhodes High has increased significantly, I'm not privy to the school fees increase, and I will find out and I will respond accordingly. My understanding is that it increased by approximately 6%, but I will speak under correction. I will find out more. But just importantly, Madam Chair, I think specifically for our fee charging schools. 2020 was really a very damaging year because they struggled to get school fees in because of learners that were not at the school and parents are reluctant, and some of our parents also struggling. And although we have made requests for the schools not to increase by huge amount, they had big shortfalls last year, and some of them trying to do it by increasing it more than a certain amount. But we will find out specifically relating to roads what the percentage increase was.
Thank you, Mr. Lani. I would also want to indicate that we will send that request in writing so that we also get your feedback in writing with regard to that. Thank you. Members, we have come to the end of the presentations and our Q&A. But before we say goodbye to the department and to the Public Service Commissioner, I want to extend an opportunity for some closing remarks. And Mr. Mayor, I'm indicating to you from the department side, and then obviously Commissioner Goosen from the PSC side. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. And as I've indicated earlier, we are deeply appreciative of the efforts of various stakeholders within government for us to be able to work together in terms of ridding our schools of the scourge of people wanting to access school funds. We really like the Public Service Commission to support us with that request that I've made earlier, and we look forward to working with them on other cases as well. I do appreciate the work that they've done in these particular cases that they've brought forward, the diligence with which they followed it through, and we will continue to support and, of course, effect any recommendations from on our side that are within our means to do. So we commit ourselves to that as an organization, and we will always try to minimize, the potential impact of fraudulent activities within our schools. Thank you, and thank you to the committee as well for this opportunity. Yourself as the chairperson and all the honourable members. Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioner Goosen.
Chairperson, once again, thank you for this opportunity to present. As I mentioned, education is one of the bigger departments that we work with, and most of our investigations take place there. Chairperson, I take a no tolerance approach in respect of corruption in schools, and so we do follow through vigorously. Our relationship with the department has grown really over the last 2 years in the manner in which we've managed to cooperate with senior officials, also with investigators and so on. And I have made the offer, I make it again, that we are available to assist, particularly in respect of investigations, in respect of training, just capacity building, also in respect of investigations, because sometimes the issues don't come to us directly. So we really look forward to building that relationship. As regards the contact details, I'm going to ask that my manager just send through the details to the committee secretary in respect of contacting us if there are any issues, as Commissioner Honourable Sayed has asked for contact details. But really, we are committed to taking this and to ridding the department and this our government of our public service for any elements of dishonesty and corrupt activity, because it only serves to prejudice our people. Thank you very much again for the opportunity to present, Chairperson.
Thank you very much from my side, Commissioner. I wish to bestow my thanks on behalf of the Standing Committee for your availability together with your office this afternoon. And I trust that this relationship can develop between the Standing Committee and your office, and that we would request of you again to come and present to the Standing Committee. So thank you very much for the engagement this afternoon, for handling all the robust input and questions. And then also my heartfelt thanks to the department for availing yourselves and always being willing to come and present and answer questions in front of the standing committee. With that said, I want to say goodbye to all our guests this afternoon, and I want to say go well and please, please keep safe and adhere to the COVID-19 protocols. Thank you. Go well.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Good.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, we are now at the point of our agenda to look at possible recommendations from the presentations that we have had. I am giving you the opportunity by virtue of raising your hand. Okay, I will ask Wasima, those that has been captured, if she can read back to us.
Thank you, Chair, through you, if I'm clear. The one raised by Member Sayed on the National Anti-Corruption Hotline, as well as reporting maladministration to the PSC to provide that contact details to the committee. The second is Member Alan Meyer, sorry, not member, Mr. Alan Meyer requesting further discussion with Advocate Goosen and access to the investigators to have a training session with them in future. Advocate and Commissioner Goosen has agreed to that. And then also Mr. Lani said that they would provide the roads highs fees increase for this year to us, as he does not have the accurate amount. That's all that I've captured thus far.
Thank you, Massimo. In regard to if they can just indicate also the increase of 19, 20, and 21, so that we can see the comparisons, please.
Sure, Chair. 2019 to 2021 will do.
Yeah. Okay, members, I take it that it is then all in order. Technical high school report. This was the oversight visit that was the 21st of May. Can you move up, Wasima? Okay, just check the attendance. That was the day. No? Okay, that was the delegation and the apologies that we have received. Okay, continue. As you recall, there were governance issues at the school and paying an oversight visit to the school. Members, you have received this report as well. And I want to read the report. Recommendation in the report is the point 4, and it should be arranged with the school and the school governing body members to
Sorry, Chair, I didn't get that.
discuss
You're
the
breaking up.
undertaking and not to discussion the undertaking of. Oh, sorry, my connection is very bad here. The committee recommended that another engagement be arranged with the school and the previous school experience at the school. Now, members, that was our recommendation at the time when we set up the report. Can I have feedback? Members, are you still here?
Yes, we are here, Chair.
Yes, Chair, indeed, we are here.
Present, thank you.
Is anybody here? No, because it seems that I'm talking to myself. Okay, all right. Stay with. Anybody there?
We
Chair,
can't
you're
hear you,
breaking up.
Chair. You're breaking.
Members, are you there?
We are here, Chair.
We are here, Chair.
Okay, can you hear me? Did you hear my question?
You are breaking up, Chair.
Did you hear
No,
my
Chair.
question?
No, Chair, we didn't. Breaking up.
You are breaking up, Chair.
Okay. I'm typing in the chat box. Do we stand our recommendation in this report? Members, if you can hear me, I've put a question. I've posed a question in the chat box.
Yes, Chair, I agree with the recommendation. I think we must stand by it. It still remains relevant. Yeah, because more and more issues are coming out which speak to what we already saw at the school. So I think I agree that we stand by it. Yeah.
Okay. All right, because this is not going away.
It's not going away.
The North Pine governance issue is not going away.
It's not.
Okay. All right. Can I then ask that we give the procedural officer and the chair the go-ahead to look into the program as to where we can fit it?
Yes.
Yes, Chair.
Chair, could I also just make another suggestion, Chair?
Yes.
Chair, could I also just request that, and I know maybe with schools and the people attending these visits, it can now with COVID be an issue, but I just wanted to suggest that the constituency MP, member Honourable Joseph, possibly also be invited maybe to accompany us. Given that it's a constituency MP and these issues were also been brought to his attention, and the ward councillor as well, you know, if possible, if they could also maybe just be given an invitation, you know.
The other members can come in, but in regard to that request from member Sayed, I just want to indicate that we are going to embark on a second oversight visit to North Pine School with regards to the governance issue, not politics.
No, certainly, Chair. Yeah, not. I'm saying it in the context because the governance issues were raised by him as well. We've been, I mean, in quite a few of the correspondence that have come post our session, you know, there at the school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then that is fine with me.
Chair, I agree.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I agree, Chair. I think we've done that before, where councillors and those people relevant was invited. I think, like you said, it's just to resolve the governance issues, nothing else, and it's oversight visit. It doesn't go to a political meeting. So I'm with you, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I think
Thank
we're on
you
the
very
same
much.
page with them as well, you know, so it's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Then members, I want to ask, or I want to propose to you that in regard to going forward, starting in September, whether we could take this standing committee meetings back to the chamber. I want to hear your take on it.
Just put my hand.
Members, did you hear me?
Chair, I hear you. My hand, as
Yes.
I think it was down, now it's up. Can you hear me?
Okay, continue.
Yes, Chair, I want to actually welcome this proposal, Chair, because I think also by then people, I mean, members in the committee, most would have also been vaccinated by then, and I think it's a good idea. It just assists us with network issues, also just in terms of our own focus and concentration. Because people phone you while you're in these meetings, sometimes you lose focus. So I think it's just much better. Let us go that route. I support the proposal, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Member Christians?
Chair, I think, you know, we don't know, will Friday know if the elections will be postponed or not. So, you know, if it's not postponed and still takes place, you know, I don't know about you, but I've got quite a bit of work to do. I would agree on that, but I would still then ask if the, you know, if you have the dual system where maybe 3 or 4 members is there and one cannot make it, that we then, you know, have it also on this platform. But if it's not possible, it's fine. I'm just saying a person might be somewhere else in the province. And if we can still be allowed to connect, if we want to, with this virtual platform, then I'll agree. So I'm just saying, you know, if the elections is this year, then it means, you know, it's going to be a busy schedule still. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we can agree to then a hybrid system. If you are available for the chamber, then you are. If you're not, you can take it from wherever you are virtually.
Thank you very much. That's much grace allowed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Member Bosman, I saw your microphone go on and then go off.
No, Chairperson, I want to support Member Christian's proposal. My constituency is about 4 hours from Cape Town, so it's slightly difficult to get back on a Tuesday afternoon.
Okay. All right. Member Sayed, then that works for you, and the committee, that works for you as well?
Yes, Chairperson, Member Barangay, I also agree with the hybrid system. That will be fine, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, then there was a request from Member Sayed, and Member Sayed, you must now correct me if I'm wrong, for this committee to get regular updates from the department as to the number of learners that are infected with COVID.
Yes, Chair, that's correct, Chair. It doesn't need to be in a meeting, but even if we just get something, you know, like a document, you know, even if they send us every week something in writing.
All right. So we are then going to request from them to give us weekly numbers on learners that are not in school because they were infected with the COVID virus.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, all right, so we shall do that. Then members, just keep yourself up to date with the parliamentary program and where we are and what the next subject would be, so that you are in the loop as to what is happening around the standing committee meeting, and then also in regard to the confirmation of when the election will be. We have in our parliamentary program, as the standing committee, we have plotted an oversight, and this we have been speaking about for a very long time, from the 13th to the 17th of September in the central Eden Central Karoo region. So please just offer yourself with that, members. Then with that said, I want to thank you for your support this afternoon in the Standing Committee meeting and for you availing yourselves. And I want to say that you must go well and keep safe. Please, please, please adhere to the COVID-19 protocols. And then I want to bestow a heartfelt thanks to IT in the form of Siraj Hassan, who has assisted us this afternoon, and then to Ben Daza, our Senior Procedural Officer, and then to Wasima Hassan Musa, our Procedural Officer, for making this Standing Committee meeting happen. Members, with that said, the Standing Committee meeting of Education dated the 24th of August 2021 is now adjourned. Thank you.